welcome back to Jeff Koinange live here at Citizen Television. It is election season and nomination season for that matter. Less than 4 months to go before the August general election. A lot of confusion out there. This is going to be sort of a civic education for people who are lost out there. Please watch this show and spread the word. Because here we have former IEBC Vice Chair Lillian Mahiri-Zaja. She's in the house. Ladies first always. Right next to her, on her right, is Steve Ogola. Great to see him as always. And right next to me here is Bobby Mukangi, constitutional lawyer, part of the present Kenya Constitution. He was part of the writing of it. Folks, good to see you all. Thanks so much for your time. Lillian, let's start with you. It is nomination season after all. The question, why so much confusion? Despite what party you're in or is out there, the confusion and the chaos. What is it about us?
Oh, Jeff, this is a $1 million question with a million answers. And I think that confusion, we thought that now with the amendments to the Political Parties Act, we thought there would be some order. And remember, IEBC has a role to supervise the process by which parties nominate candidates for election. But it cannot happen because the capacity even within the commission is not there. And right now they are busy. They are also busy setting themselves to the general election. But you find there's a lot of deceit in nominations. And you can see the parties now, the way they are focusing on their strongholds and on the candidates they have earmarked. And if you go to the website of the Registrar of Political Parties, I think I was looking at it and I saw 53 parties. They've shown the method they are going to use for nominations. Direct, indirect. So they have a leeway of trying, you know, to see how they can balance things out for the candidates they want and for those ones, ile wamesikia on the ground. The ones who are wanted on the ground.
Yes, Steve Ogola, I see you nodding there. You're nodding in agreement, huh?
Yeah, Jeff, first of all, permit me to sensitize Kenyans on the real reason, of course, much to the annoyance of our political party leaders and our political parties, because they don't want Kenyans to know this. The real reason why political party primaries are almost always fraught with fraud and falsification, illegalities and irregularities is because the organizing principle that guide the party primaries is always to forestall fallouts among the aspirants that contest in those parties. Political parties conduct nominations so close to the deadline to make it impossible for aspirants to jump ship into other parties or to run as independent parties. They do not, and as I said earlier, it would be overly ambitious or disturbingly naive for someone to imagine that the purpose why we are having party primaries is to advance electoral democracy. Far from it. Far from it. This is a ritual to validate political parties or to give them some posture of legitimacy as parties that can advance democracy. But the real reason why we conduct nomination, we dangle the promise of nomination so that we keep everyone in the house and make it difficult for them to bolt out. Because if you look at the timelines that IEBC has published, because the starting point for interrogation of the manner in which we conduct our nomination is the IEBC Election Operation Plan. And this document is publicly available. And I would urge all Kenyans to download this document. Page 46 of that document, IEBC has clearly stated that it expects political parties to finalize nominations by 22nd of April. You have seen ODM, for instance, deferring nomination in Mombasa County to an indefinite and defined date, which means they will not be able, for instance, to comply within that timeline. If they are unable to comply with the timeline, it means disgruntled party members cannot have enough time to go to the internal party dispute resolution mechanism, and if they are not satisfied with the outcome, they don't have enough time to go to the political party dispute tribunal. And if they are not satisfied, they have no time to go to the High Court for judicial review, which means the deadline for an aspirant who feels he's going to be shortchanged to quit his political party is May 9th. Political parties have made it difficult for some, because they will keep you close and engaged as they race towards May 9th. And after May 9th, even if you quit, even if you're disgruntled, you're not permitted by the law to run as an independent candidate.
Bobby Mukangi, the law that you helped write. I mean, Steve is talking about downloading this document, right?
Yes.
Kenyans haven't even downloaded the Kenya Constitution.
True.
We don't like to read.
True. We don't like to read. But again, I think there's been a culture of ensuring that Kenyans do not pay attention to that constitution. When you look at the politics that we've had since 2010, with very clear actions and misactions from senior political players in belittling, ensuring that the Constitution is seen at the end of the day as just paper with ink, but not the document that is supposed to run this country. So with time, Kenyans have adopted a rather fatalistic attitude, skeptical attitude, and apathy towards what you'd say, is real politics, engaging in politics that they believe would be facilitative in transforming their lives. When you look at the attention and the spirit that Kenyans conducted themselves politically, and especially the period between 2002 and 2010, when we got this constitution, and during the run-up to 2013 elections, that fervor, that spirit, that attention has slowly been dying. And that's why even when you look at certain parameters, like in the recent voter registration exercises, you're seeing and noting a lot of apathy, and especially because this voter and enhanced voter registration exercises target the youth. And so when you see numbers not being met, it shows you that the people who are supposed to be attracted to political action, political movements, young people in Kenya, have grown up to hear the voice of the adults around them, that politics doesn't pay. Politics is a waste of time. And that stemmed from, as you asked, the very direct activity around bastardizing the Constitution and politics, for that matter, in this country. If I may add something to what my colleagues had spoken to earlier, and you mentioned, why the chaos, why the disruptions, and to me, I think it's the nature of our politics. There's premium in chaos. It's the nature of our society. I mean, look at what is happening in our streets. It's actually the matatu culture. You make money if you drive on the side roads or on the pavement, not on the road, and that's the culture you find in our society. You actually make something out of breaking rules, and it feeds into our politics. So the confusion, the chaos is just an indication of what our society is, and our political parties, and that, for that matter, if we have real political parties, because sometimes these are just vehicles for people to get elected, to mobilize, to ensure they control other people who want to get into the political bandwagon.
Absolutely.
Steve was speaking to that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we are. The chaos, the confusion, whether we have institutions that are proper in terms of political parties, that's where Kenyans, unfortunately, are.
Lillian, this brings me to my next point. Right off, coming off of what Bobby just said, tomorrow, the 14th, UDA holds national nominations. 36 counties, one party in one day. This is going to be a tough challenge, huh?
Very tough one. Remember, nominations are elections. They are not just nominations. You know, you're not going to stand in a hall and say, Jeff is standing for Nairobi or this ward. You have to conduct an election. So you have to organize your party, you have to organize your members in such a way that they is seen to be either a direct election or, as they've put in on the website of the ORPP, an indirect nomination. So you see, you have to have a specific framework of ensuring you are carrying out an election, you are conducting a transparent process so that the people can say, yes, we have chosen Jeff or Bobby for this particular constituency. So it is quite an exercise. And as I said earlier, IEBC has a role in supervising the candidates who are nominated. But the capacity is another huge challenge. They just
can't handle it. They cannot handle it.
No.
But they should be a part of it.
Yeah, they should. And they only do that because the parties file the membership lists. Remember, the lists have to be certified by the registrar of political parties and then submitted to IEBC. And they have to also submit to IEBC their nomination rules. How are you going to conduct the election? So against that checklist on their nomination rules is what IEBC uses. But remember, they are not on the ground. So the chaos that you see is because they are not supervised as they should. So the chaos erupt, and you showed that in the news tonight, people saying we did not want so and so. We want to go back and elect. I think some wananchi understand what goes on. So they've already said it. We want to elect. And people will be watching tomorrow. I said off the camera that a journalist asked me, do you think they have that capacity to carry out those nominations tomorrow? And I said, it depends. For me, it was a magic word just to say, it depends. Yeah. Go and interrogate them. If they have the resources and they can organize those elections, then we will see it tomorrow in the outcome. If they don't, we will also see it tomorrow. Yeah. So it's a wait and see. It's a wait and see.
But Steve, look, it's only UDA members who are going to vote tomorrow. But how do we know that if IEBC or someone isn't supervising, what's to tell one UDA supporter in one county voting, and then they cross over to another county and vote? Who's going to account for that?
I think, first of all, Jeff, there are two problems with the UDA conducting 36 nominations in 36 counties in one day. The first problem is that they stretch their capacity, and Lillian has gotten it right, to breaking point. I think we can expect disastrous outcome if you look at it objectively. Number two, the spillover to the internal UDA party dispute resolution mechanism is going to be felt. And then, of course, then to the political parties dispute tribunal, which means UDA may be inadvertently making it difficult for disgruntled aspirants to seek redress. Because I think they would ought to have staggered these nominations. But back to your question, I think the more fundamental question of constitutional and political relevance is this. Do we have a voter register? You cannot approbate and reprobate accountability at the same time. You want IEBC to be accountable in the way in which it is managing the electoral process every step of the way. But you are managing your own internal process in a very deliberately opaque manner that is shrouded in mystery. We have to ask fundamental questions, and there's still time for UDA to clarify. They can call in, they can text. Do we have a verified voter register of UDA party members? The election officials, have they been trained on election management? Because as Lillian has said, nominations are part and parcel of the electoral process. And political parties, they feed candidates into the general election. The party officials that will be conducting the nomination, were they trained? When were they trained? Have the party members been sensitized on how to vote? Because I saw in Turkana, and I saw that with a lot of amusement as opposed to encouragement, that people in Turkana are voting electronically. I doubted the capacity of a starving mother to be given a tablet and vote. I found that curious. In as much as you want to celebrate the picture of a frail woman bending over a tablet and swiping through, there's a high chance that that woman is coming into contact with that tablet for the first time. And the shock reaction can confuse her ability to process the candidates. People who have gone to school, like you and I, sometimes get overwhelmed by a long list of candidates on the queue. You can imagine a mother given a tablet. And you see, it's not innovation. It's not innovation per se. It's just some disparate measure to just, let's tick the boxes. I think UDA has not done a great job, neither has ODM or these other political parties, in terms of the preparatory framework that is necessary to pave way for a meaningful and impactful nomination. What is going to happen tomorrow, in all honesty, Jeff, is just ticking boxes so that it can be seen that we have conducted nomination, then we can then transition to managing the fallout.
Bobby, and then there's the question of direct ticket. Some people say that's very undemocratic. When you just assign, this is the person for this one, that's very undemocratic.
It is. Well, it depends on the party's rules. If they give ability or facility to be able to do that, then well and good. If the party sat and agreed that in certain instances we may be able to do that, but I think also with very clear guiding steps as to even if we have to give a direct ticket to a certain candidate, how do we arrive at that decision? You know, I think then that could be sort of kosher. The issue I think you're talking about or speaking to is what is normally the culture with our parties, that you pretend, as my colleagues were saying, to be running an election. And you get candidates or aspirants, and first of all, you get them to pay for nomination. You get them to print posters, campaign materials with your banners. You get them to have these vehicles with very loud PA systems to run around, beating drums for your party, and for that matter, the big kahuna of the party, normally the party leader and the presidential candidate. And so eventually, before the direct ticket, which the party's presidium already knows that we are going to give this ticket to a certain candidate, they ensure that they milk the other aspirants to the last drop. They exhaust the resources that these aspirants could provide to the party in those different ways I've mentioned, including other backroom ways that we don't get to see. But when you talk to many aspirants who've gone through these processes and they give you their tales around and about what happened, and how they came to discover that they were going to be shortchanged. At the end of the day, it's quite horrific. Yeah. But your question, whether it's democratic or not, I think it still goes back to the question of whether we have democratic political parties. What are these institutions that we are calling political parties? Are they driven by any ideology? What is their history? What purpose do they serve to facilitating constitutional and electoral democracy in this country? And when you ask those questions and you look at many of these outfits that are going to be contesting the election on August 9th, many do not fit the bill. They're just vehicles that are crafted together to ensure, as I said, certain personalities, manage elections, manage who gets to run and manage who gets to be elected at the end of the day. And after that, that's why many of them don't have a shelf life of more than 5 years or one election cycle. So I think the problem around these different ways of whether it's an election or a selection, whether it's a democratic process or not, stems from the seeding. And that is that most, if not all, of our political parties are not democratic at all.
Yeah, it gives way to that expression, there will be premium tiers. You're so right there, Bobby. But Lily, let me ask you, less than 4 months to go. Less than 4 months. And Kenyans are still not quite sure what's going. What should the IEBC be doing at this point?
Right now, you know, they've already given their timelines. As Steve said, there was the EOP that was launched last year in June. And then in January, I think round about 20th of January, there was the Gazette notice announcing officially the date of the general election. And all the timelines are there in that Gazette notice, both statutory timelines and the administrative timelines. So they have to ensure they carry people along, especially now when we're having the nominations and people are out there selecting or electing their candidates. They have to carry people along. Remember, they've been grumbling about the inadequacy of the funds. The supplementary budget, I think they got about 8.8 billion more. So hopefully they'll be carrying out some voter education so that people can know that, you know, after the nominations, what next? You know, after that, so that they know that from 29th of May, we have the campaign period starting up to the 6th. Yeah? So people can engage, people can participate. But as it is now, it is a bit quiet. Yes, we have seen those Gazette notices. Not everybody can go to the Kenya Gazette and read that. I think there was a shorter version of the timelines in the press, but I'm not sure how many people get the press. So I think there is a vacuum somewhere. Yeah. There is a vacuum.
Yeah, Steve, it begs the question, IEBC seems invisible in all of this. Why is that?
I think IEBC is very much visible, and IEBC has its eyes on the ball in terms of the timelines. But I think, allow me, permit me to just respond. I feel like I could add a point to the question of direct ticketing. Yeah? The pressing problem with direct tickets is not that political parties don't have the permission within their constitution, within the law, to issue direct. They have that opportunity. But the rationale, Jeff. The rationale, what is the rationale? And how do you implement that decision? And how do you co-opt party members to that decision? Because you see, if you permit people to express interest in a particular seat, and they campaign, they invest their money in that campaign, you open up for nominations, call for nomination, they pick nomination forms, they pay money, and then you can't just have an abrupt maneuver and then say, you know what, we have some commission, some scientific poll that tells us Jeff is the leading candidate. You know, if there is only one candidate, I think Kikuyu MP in the last election, Kimani Ichung'wah, was unopposed. Yeah. I think this is the only MP that was elected unopposed. Yeah. In the entire constituency, it was running on Jubilee. You know, it would antagonize common sense, for lack of a better word, to call for nomination when there's only one candidate. If there's more than one candidate, allow them to compete and then let the results show who the winner is. You cannot come back so late in the day. And I think as a practitioner who is well versed with judicial review proceedings at the High Court, most of these decisions by political parties on direct ticketing can actually be reversed. You saw what happened in Garissa. Yeah. In a very embarrassing show, ODM wrote to Garissa governor, His Excellency Governor Ali Korani, and said, no, we are not going to allow you to participate because we've already made a choice. You know, so late when a lot of processes, campaign has gone on, money has been paid. So I think parties need to rethink the approach to direct ticketing. But insofar as IEBC is concerned, the law gives the option of political parties inviting IEBC to conduct their party primaries. But I think IEBC itself has expressed challenges, capacity gaps, in terms of they are pressed with their own timelines, that getting time to conduct primaries for political parties would be a practical challenge. And I think what we said earlier, if parties were honest that they want nominations to be conducted in a manner that advances the Constitution's core commitments, which is deepening electoral democracy, they would stagger this nomination. Section 13 of the Elections Act states clearly that party primaries ought to be conducted at least 90 days to the election, which means you can conduct it even 6 months or 8 months. Yeah. Nothing stops ODM and Jubilee and UDA and so on and so forth from announcing in advance that we shall conduct our nominations 8 months or 6 months to the ballot. Then you give time people to recover, to plan around it. But when you corner people to a last-minute date, I mean, I want Kenyans to understand that there is nothing like nominations here. And the principle that guide nomination, this is a framework of impunity and a disturbing pattern of manipulation of the law. The law allows us to submit the list of candidates. And remember, the election amendment laws now tightens the grip of political parties on the electoral process. They have said nomination is no longer nomination properly so-called. They have created a distinction within nomination, which they are calling a process, with the registration of candidates, which means they have thrown IEBC to the drawing board to issue fresh timelines. They are asking IEBC to review the election operation plan. And we have, I mean, Jeff, we have to decide as Kenyans, yeah? IEBC released the post-election evaluation report, 2017. We ought to have read it. If you look at that report, it documents the challenges that needed to have been addressed to permit us to have a more free and fair, credible and accountable election. But we have gone full cycle in repeating the same mistakes. We are reviewing electoral laws, less than 120 days to election. Parliament was debating it today. We are cornering IEBC to adjust election operation timelines. We are conducting nominations so late in the day. I think the way we are running this 2022 election, and when I say we, I mean political parties. I think Kenyans sometimes think that election management is all about IEBC. They forget that 85% of election management is managed by the parties and candidates. We need to make peace with that. Yeah. You can't bungle the process and then come back once you push the problem to IEBC and then say we demand accountability. Yeah. This time round, Jeff, I want Kenyans to rise up and to defend IEBC, because IEBC now needs accountability champions. It needs champions who can speak for it. And the way to defend IEBC is to hold candidates and parties to account. You cannot tell me about accountability when there's no nomination in Siaya County, in Homa Bay, in Mombasa. You had the aspirants saying there was an abrupt decision made in a boardroom that we defer nomination to an unknown date. I mean, can we just make peace with a few things, Jeff? Where do you stand?
I mean, it's a farce. It's almost a farce.
Yeah, it is. And I agree with Steve, you know, to a great extent when you think about, and, you know, sometimes you comment about this, and when you analyze, you look at the fate of IEBC, and you get to the conclusion that IEBC actually sometimes is set up to fail, you know, sabotage to fail. Right from, and as Steve was saying, you know, it's a mistake we keep repeating. So if we keep repeating it, it means it's a decision. You know, it's no longer a mistake. It's deliberate. Sure. You know, we are always trying to change the electoral legislative framework very late in the day. Look at how we organize the institution in terms of its leadership, the commission. You know, you recall what happened to the fate of your commission, you know, and the commissioners who came in very late, in late 2016, you know, within 12 months to the elections. Changing the laws, you know, resourcing the institution itself, and then at the end of the day, you know, blaming the same institution for failing to, or, you know, stating that it has failed to conduct itself to the required standards of its mandate. So I think we also need to ask ourselves whether we act fairly, you know, to IEBC, whether we go back to even the foundation of how IEBC is currently constructed. The parameters in the Constitution being born from, you know, Kriegler's Commission. and advisory, the recommendations that that commission provided. So you find the constitutional framework very much alive to those issues. It's protecting the right to vote, ensuring that the institutional framework is well outlined. One of the things that that commission did advise us, make sure ideally you have a commission running, 2 years to the election. We are always getting that wrong. How we get that wrong is another $1 million question, because, for instance, the IEBC has been, operating with the 3 commissioners. Look at all the court cases. Look at the deficiency of posture that it has, and confidence that it has suffered amongst the public, and not because of its own cause. We have laws that state what happens if a commissioner leaves office. Why it has, or commissioners had to be replaced almost within a year to the elections, when it should have been done 2-3 years ago, So I think some of these things, as Steve says, Kenyans need to interrogate them and put the blame where it really belongs.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a political structure. Yeah.
Can you allow me to go on this?
Yes.
And this evening, I'm so excited. I'm sitting in the midst of strong defenders of the IEBC. Nobody ever sees it from the IEBC's point of view.
They're always blaming the IEBC.
They're always blaming it. And look, right now I'm aware, and as Steve said, all the regulations, very, very important regulations on voter registration, on voter education, on the ICT, have been tabled in Parliament. They are not yet passed. I think you talked about even the debate going on in Parliament. They haven't been passed. So why do we have to always wait for this last minute? Put pressure on the Commission when they also have their constitutional mandate to take care of. They are expected to be watching and seeing that the political parties adhere to their nomination rules. They don't have that capacity. Then they are blamed for the mess. Already there is a mess, and they're going to be blamed. But look, we are only how many days? We are on countdown now.
Literally.
And nobody is also looking at the administrative timelines. Who's supposed to help IEBC? And I would totally agree with what Steve says. 85% of the work on managing elections is out there, completely out there. We need, I don't know how we are going to do it. We have the principles in Article 91 of the Constitution. We now have required parties to have structures. We have even amendments to the Political Parties Act to ensure that they conform. They still do not conform. I don't know. And this is the chaos. This is where now Mwananchi stands at a loss. Look at the direct nominations. If you look at the Political Parties Act and look at the definition of direct nomination, it speaks about the membership of the party electing. But from where we stand, it is the party itself electing. Same with the indirect nominations. It speaks about the party organizing, selecting members, a college of members to elect. Look at that. So where is the difference? They manipulate everything in the law to ensure Mwananchi has no place. Because remember, we have said under Article 91 of the Constitution, these are public institutions. Yet, on the converse, they are run as personal institutions.
Absolutely.
No accountability to Mwananchi.
Folks, I have to take a break, but this is so sad. We're supposed to be so educated and so advanced, but look at the mess we put ourselves in. Are we to blame for this? And also, how do we avoid the pitfalls of 2017? Lillian, you were there. From 2013 on, how do we avoid the pitfalls? Or do we keep going round and round in circles?
It's the politicians.
Lillian Mahiri Saja says it's the politician. Steve Ogola is also here. Bobby Mukangi. Folks, we're talking learned people. This is a civic education. For those of you who have no clue, with what, 162 days or something it is to the elections, imagine that. And still, they're debating issues in Parliament? Come on, who does that?
Yeah, sure.
Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JKLive. Oh, by the way, we'll get you your tweets on the magic wall in a little while. I know you have many questions for our guests. Jeff Koinange Live takes a break. We'll be back.